Imagine this. You are standing at the edge of a crowded room, your heart pounding in your chest. Across the space, someone catches your eye, a person who seems to radiate an almost magnetic energy. You feel drawn to them, compelled to approach, to connect, to be seen. But as you take a step forward, something shifts. Their gaze flickers past you, uninterested, dismissive. In that moment, a familiar ache settles in your chest. Rejection. It stings, doesn't it? That sharp, visceral reminder that you are not enough, that you have been deemed unworthy of their attention. You retreat, your confidence shattered, and the room suddenly feels colder, emptier. Now, imagine something else. What if that rejection, that very moment of dismissal, could be transformed into something entirely different? What if, instead of retreating, you could turn that rejection into a force so compelling, so irresistible, that it bends the situation in your favor? What if the key to unlocking this power lies not in chasing approval, but in doing the exact opposite? What if the secret to turning rejection into attraction is rooted in a psychological principle so counterintuitive, so paradoxical, that it feels almost like a betrayal of everything you've been taught about human connection? This is the great question we must confront. Why does rejection hurt so deeply, and how can we use its sting to our advantage? Why do we, as humans, instinctively recoil from rejection, yet secretly crave the very things that seem to elude us? And what if the answer lies not in trying harder, but in stepping back, not in seeking validation, but in embracing the power of its absence? Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, once wrote, "What you resist persists." These 4 words contain a profound truth about human psychology. The more we chase after something, whether it's love, approval, or connection, the more it seems to slip through our fingers. The harder we try to avoid rejection, the more it seems to find us. But what if the act of chasing itself is the problem? What if the key to transforming rejection into attraction lies not in pursuing, but in redirecting our energy in a way that defies conventional wisdom? Consider this paradox. The moment you stop seeking approval is often the moment you become most attractive. The moment you stop trying to control how others perceive you is often the moment they begin to see you in a new light. This is the essence of inverse psychology, a principle that flips the script on traditional approaches to human interaction. It's not about manipulation or deceit. It's about understanding the hidden dynamics of desire and using them to create a deeper, more authentic connection. But here's the catch. To harness this power, you must first confront the uncomfortable truth about rejection. You must ask yourself why it holds such sway over you. Why does the fear of being ignored, dismissed, or overlooked feel so existential? Why does it trigger such a primal response, as though your very survival depends on being seen and accepted? And what if the answer lies not in the rejection itself, but in the meaning you attach to it? Rejection, at its core, is a mirror. It reflects not your worth, but your fears, your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, your deepest doubts about yourself. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself that you'd rather keep hidden. And yet, it is precisely this confrontation that holds the key to transformation. Because once you understand why rejection affects you so deeply, you can begin to rewrite the script. You can begin to see it not as a verdict on your value, but as an opportunity, a catalyst for growth, for self-discovery, for reclaiming your power. So, let us begin here, at the edge of this crowded room, with the ache of rejection still fresh in your chest. Let us ask the questions that most people are too afraid to confront. Let us explore the hidden forces that shape our desires, our fears, and our interactions with others. And let us uncover the radical truth that lies at the heart of inverse psychology. That rejection, when understood and wielded correctly, can become the very thing that draws others to you. But before we dive into the mechanics of this transformation, we must first confront the hidden problem. the psychological and philosophical roots of rejection itself. For it is only by understanding the source of the wound that we can begin to heal it. And it is only by healing it that we can unlock the power to turn rejection into attraction. So, take a deep breath. The journey begins now. To understand why rejection cuts so deeply, we must first confront the hidden forces that shape our relationship with it. Rejection is not merely a social inconvenience. It is a psychological earthquake that reverberates through the deepest layers of our psyche. It triggers a cascade of emotions, shame, inadequacy, fear, that feel almost primal in their intensity. But why? Why does the act of being overlooked or dismissed by another person feel so existential, so threatening to our sense of self? The answer lies in the intersection of psychology, philosophy, and the very fabric of human evolution. To begin, we must turn to Carl Jung, who once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Jung understood that human connection is not a superficial exchange, it is a profound interplay of identities, desires, and fears. When we seek connection, we are not merely seeking validation, we are seeking a reflection of ourselves. We are searching for confirmation that we exist, that we matter, that we belong. But here's the paradox. The more we seek this confirmation, the more elusive it becomes. This is because desire, by its very nature, is rooted in lack. The French philosopher René Descartes once said, "I think, therefore I am," but the unspoken corollary to this statement is far more revealing. I desire, therefore I am not. Desire is the acknowledgement of absence, the admission that something is missing. And when that desire is directed toward another person, it creates a power dynamic that is inherently unbalanced. The moment you place your sense of worth in someone else's hands, you give them the power to validate or invalidate your existence. This dynamic is further complicated by what the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer called the will to live, the primal force that drives all human behavior. According to Schopenhauer, the will to live is not just a desire for survival, it is a relentless, insatiable craving for fulfillment. It is the force that compels us to seek love, approval, and connection, even when these things seem out of reach. But Schopenhauer also recognized the tragic irony of this pursuit. The more we strive to fulfill our desires, the more we suffer. The will to live, he argued, is both the source of our greatest joys and our deepest pains. In the context of rejection, this paradox becomes painfully clear. The moment you desire someone's approval, you become vulnerable to their rejection. And the more you desire it, the more their rejection will wound you. This is not just a psychological truth, it is a neurological one. Studies have shown that the brain processes social rejection in the same way it processes physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, the region of the brain responsible for detecting pain, and yet, even as we suffer under the weight of this cultural conditioning, we continue to chase after the very things that hurt us. Why? Because we are trapped in what the existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith, a state of self-deception in which we deny our own freedom and responsibility. We convince ourselves that our worth is determined by others, that our happiness depends on external validation. We become prisoners of our own desires, unable to see that the key to our liberation lies within us. This is the hidden problem at the heart of rejection. It is not just a reflection of our external circumstances, it is a reflection of our internal beliefs. It reveals the ways in which we have internalized the judgments of others, the ways in which we have allowed our sense of self to be shaped by forces outside of our control. And until we confront these beliefs, until we dismantle the narratives that keep us trapped in cycles of seeking and suffering, we will remain vulnerable to the sting of rejection. But there is hope, because the same forces that make rejection so painful also hold the key to transcending it. The will to live, The desire for connection, the need for validation, these are not weaknesses to be eradicated. They are energies to be redirected. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche understood this when he wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." Rejection, when understood and embraced, can become a catalyst for transformation. It can force us to confront our fears, to question our assumptions, to reclaim our power. And this is where inverse psychology comes in. By flipping the script on rejection, by reframing it not as a verdict on our worth, but as an opportunity for growth, we can begin to break free from the cycle of seeking and suffering. We can begin to see rejection not as something to be avoided, but as something to be harnessed. But to do this, we must first understand the unseen consequences of rejection, the ways in which it silently shapes our lives, our relationships, and our sense of self. So, let us dive deeper. Let us explore the hidden mechanisms of rejection, the cognitive biases and cultural conditioning that keep us trapped in its grip. And let us begin to uncover the radical truth that lies at the heart of inverse psychology, that rejection, when wielded correctly, can become the very thing that sets us free. Rejection is not a singular event. It is a ripple that spreads through every corner of your life, shaping your thoughts, your behaviors, and your relationships in ways you may not even realize. It is a silent architect, constructing walls where there could be bridges, planting seeds of doubt where there could be confidence. But its influence goes even deeper than that. Rejection doesn't just affect how you interact with others, it alters how you see yourself. It rewrites your internal narrative, often without your conscious consent. Consider this. Every time you experience rejection, your brain doesn't just register the event, it creates a story around it. This story is rarely neutral. It is often tinged with shame, self-criticism, and a sense of inadequacy. "I wasn't good enough," the story whispers. "I'll never be good enough." Over time, these stories accumulate, forming a kind of mental filter through which you interpret every subsequent interaction. This is what psychologists call confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out evidence that supports your existing beliefs while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. If you believe you are unworthy of love or acceptance, you will unconsciously seek out experiences that confirm this belief, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of rejection. But the consequences of rejection extend far beyond the individual. They seep into the collective consciousness, shaping societal norms and cultural expectations. Think about the way rejection is portrayed in media and literature. It is often framed as a personal failure, a sign that you are lacking in some fundamental way. The rejected lover is pitied, the overlooked employee is dismissed, the ignored artist is forgotten. These narratives reinforce the idea that rejection is something to be feared, avoided at all costs, and in doing so, they perpetuate a culture of conformity where the fear of rejection stifles creativity, authenticity, and individuality. This cultural conditioning is further amplified by what psychologists call social comparison theory, the tendency to evaluate our own worth by comparing ourselves to others. In a world where social media platforms showcase curated highlights of people's lives, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that everyone else is living a rejection-free existence. This illusion of perfection only deepens the sting of rejection, making it feel like a personal failing rather than a universal human experience. The truth, of course, is that everyone experiences rejection. But in a culture that equates worth with visibility, admitting this feels like an admission of weakness. And then there's the neurological impact. As mentioned earlier, rejection activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain. But its effects don't stop there. Studies have shown that repeated experiences of rejection can lead to changes in brain chemistry, including reduced levels of dopamine and serotonin, neurotransmitters associated with pleasure and well-being. Over time, this can contribute to symptoms of depression, anxiety, and chronic stress. In other words, rejection doesn't just hurt in the moment. It can leave lasting scars on your mental and emotional health. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of rejection is the way it shapes your behavior. When you fear rejection, you become risk-averse. You avoid situations where rejection is a possibility, even if those situations hold the potential for growth, connection, or fulfillment. You might stop pursuing romantic relationships, avoid applying for jobs, or shy away from sharing your creative work with the world. In essence, you begin to live a smaller life, one defined by avoidance rather than aspiration. This is what the existentialist philosopher Viktor Frankl referred to as the existential vacuum, a state of emptiness and stagnation that arises when we allow fear to dictate our choices. And yet, even as rejection constricts your life, it also creates a paradoxical longing. The very thing you fear, connection, visibility, acceptance, becomes the thing you crave most. This is the cruel irony of rejection. It simultaneously pushes you away from what you desire and pulls you toward it with an almost magnetic force. You find yourself caught in a cycle of seeking and retreating, chasing after validation, while simultaneously sabotaging your chances of receiving it. This cycle is not just exhausting, it is dehumanizing. It reduces you to a passive participant in your own life, someone who reacts to external circumstances rather than shaping them. It strips you of agency, of the ability to define your own worth on your own terms, and in doing so, it perpetuates the very conditions that make rejection so painful in the first place. But here's the thing, you are not powerless in the face of rejection. The same forces that make rejection so devastating also hold the key to overcoming it. The stories you tell yourself, the cultural narratives you internalize, the behaviors you adopt in response to rejection, all of these are malleable. They can be rewritten, re-examined, and ultimately transformed. But to do this, you must first confront the unseen consequences of rejection. You must shine a light on the ways it has shaped your life, your relationships, and your sense of self. Only then can you begin to break free from its grip. And this is where the real work begins. Because breaking free from the cycle of rejection requires more than just a shift in perspective. It requires a radical reimagining of how you relate to yourself and others. It requires you to embrace the principles of inverse psychology, to stop chasing after validation and start cultivating a sense of self-worth that is independent of external approval. It requires you to see rejection not as a verdict on your value, but as an opportunity to reclaim your power. But before we explore how to do this, we must first confront the ultimate question. What if rejection is not the problem, but the solution? What if the key to transforming rejection into attraction lies not in avoiding it, but in embracing it? What if the very thing you fear most is the thing that can set you free? The answers to these questions lie in the next stage of our journey. A stage that will challenge everything you thought you knew about rejection, desire, and the nature of human connection. So, take a deep breath. The path ahead is not an easy one, but it is a necessary one. Because on the other side of rejection lies a truth so powerful, so liberating, that it has the potential to change your life forever. To break free from the cycle of rejection, you must first rebel against the very forces that keep you trapped within it. This rebellion is not a loud, dramatic act of defiance. It is a quiet, internal revolution, a shift in how you see yourself, how you relate to others, and how you navigate the world. It begins with a single, radical realization. Rejection is not about you. It is not a reflection of your worth, your value, or your potential. It is simply a reflection of someone else's preferences, biases, or limitations. And once you internalize this truth, everything changes. But this realization is only the first step. To truly break free, you must also confront the deeper, more insidious belief that underpins your fear of rejection. The belief that your worth is determined by others. This belief is not just a thought, it is a deeply ingrained narrative, one that has been shaped by your upbringing, your culture, and your experiences. To dismantle it, you must first understand where it comes from. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In other words, the beliefs that govern your behavior are often hidden from your conscious awareness. They operate in the shadows, shaping your thoughts and actions without your consent. And the belief that your worth is determined by others is one of the most pervasive and destructive of these hidden beliefs. It is the root of your fear of rejection, the source of your longing for validation, and the reason you feel so powerless in the face of dismissal. To challenge this belief, you must first bring it into the light. You must ask yourself, why do I equate rejection with worthlessness? Why do I give others the power to define my value? And most importantly, why do I believe that I need their approval to be whole? These questions are not easy to answer, but they are essential, because until you confront the underlying beliefs that fuel your fear of rejection, you will remain trapped in the cycle of seeking and suffering. Once you've identified these beliefs, the next step is to challenge them. This is where inverse psychology comes into play. Instead of seeking validation, you must learn to validate yourself. Instead of chasing after approval, you must cultivate a sense of self-worth that is independent of external feedback. And instead of fearing rejection, you must learn to see it as an opportunity for growth. This shift in perspective is not easy, but it is possible. It begins with a simple but profound act: detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference or apathy. It means releasing your grip on outcomes and surrendering your need for control. It means recognizing that you cannot control how others perceive you, but you can control how you perceive yourself. It means understanding that your worth is not something that can be given or taken away. It is something that exists within you, independent of external circumstances. To practice detachment, you must first reframe your relationship with desire. Instead of seeing desire as a lack, a void that must be filled by external validation, you must see it as an expression of your aliveness, your creativity, your humanity. Desire is not something to be ashamed of or suppressed. It is a natural and essential part of being human. But it becomes toxic when it is directed outward, when it becomes a desperate plea for approval rather than a joyful expression of self. This is where inverse psychology becomes a powerful tool. Instead of trying to win someone's approval, you must focus on becoming the kind of person who doesn't need it. Instead of trying to prove your worth to others, you must focus on embodying your worth in every thought, word, and action. And instead of fearing rejection, you must learn to embrace it as a natural and inevitable part of life. This shift in mindset is not just theoretical, it is practical. It is practical. It requires you to take concrete steps to reclaim your power and redefine your relationship with rejection. Here are a few strategies to help you get started. Practice self-validation. Every time you feel the sting of rejection, remind yourself of your inherent worth. Write down your strengths, your accomplishments, and the qualities that make you unique. Speak to yourself with kindness and compassion as you would to a close friend. Over time, this practice will help you internalize the belief that your worth is not determined by others. Reframe rejection as redirection. Instead of seeing rejection as a failure, see it as an opportunity to grow. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use it to become stronger, wiser, or more resilient? By reframing rejection in this way, you transform it from a source of pain into a source of power. Embrace vulnerability. Rejection is painful because it makes you feel vulnerable. But vulnerability is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is the willingness to show up, to be seen, to take risks, even when there are no guarantees. By embracing vulnerability, you reclaim your power and open yourself up to deeper, more authentic connections. Cultivate inner confidence. Confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to act in spite of it. To cultivate inner confidence, focus on building a strong sense of self. Engage in activities that bring you joy. Challenge yourself to step outside your comfort zone. And surround yourself with people who uplift and inspire you. Let go of outcomes. One of the most liberating things you can do is release your attachment to outcomes. Instead of focusing on whether someone likes you or approves of you, focus on being fully present in the moment. Let go of the need to control how others perceive you, and instead focus on being authentic and true to yourself. These strategies are not quick fixes, they are lifelong practices, but over time they will help you break free from the cycle of rejection and reclaim your power. They will help you see rejection not as a threat, but as an opportunity, a chance to grow, to learn, and to become more fully yourself. But this rebellion is not just about breaking free from rejection, it is about reclaiming your humanity. It is about recognizing that your worth is not something that can be measured or quantified. It is something that exists within you, waiting to be embraced. And it is about understanding that the key to transforming rejection into attraction lies not in changing others, but in changing yourself. So take a deep breath. The journey is far from over. But with each step, you are moving closer to the ultimate truth.